was thinking about the early days of the web the other day. Do you remember WMA and WMV files? What the heck was that about? Microsoft was ahead of the curve with Windows Media Player and Windows Media Center when it came to nightmarish DRM, but somewhere along the way, the winds shifted and Microsoft launched their chance to control the media landscape. In the decades before Vista and Windows 7, Microsoft had completely dominated the early browser wars with Internet Explorer. For the decades to come, Steve Ballmer had a vision of a world ruled by Microsoft. Developers. Where people bought music for their Zunes. They streamed video through Silverlight, emailed Excel spreadsheets on their Windows mobile phones, and watched movies in Windows Media Center. And I thank my lucky stars every day that future never came to fruition. But let's take a step back and look at the state of technology that led to Windows Media. During the early 2000s, in the heyday of XP and throughout the development of Vista, it became clear that major changes in multimedia consumption were coming. Websites like YouTube finally made internet video streaming a reality. Windows XP's Movie Maker made video editing accessible to regular, everyday people. Digital cameras were becoming more affordable each year, and iPods were flying off the shelves and earning Apple billions through iTunes. It was looking like the next breakthrough formats for multimedia were going to be worth untold billions of dollars, and Microsoft was going to do everything it could to get in on that action, which culminated in a series of codecs, certifications, and of course, DRM known as Windows Media. Like the word modem is a combination of modulator and demodular, codec is a portmanteau of coder and decoder. So that's a good place to start. Think of audio and video codecs as virtual modems. When you first render a video, your computer takes information from various sources and encodes it into a single file, usually with a fair amount of compression voodoo magic behind the scenes. This is where the lines between container and codec start to blur, but in the simplest terms, a codec is just a scheme that decides how the video and audio information is translated and stored, usually compressed, into its final form. A video container is just a file type that holds the video and audio information in a single file. Like how an MKV, or if we're being archaic, an AVI file, can separately consist of video and audio encoded by nearly any codec. Interestingly enough, during the research for this video, my writer Bennett learned that AVI was actually developed by Microsoft back in 1992. So Windows Media Audio, or WMA, is really a collection of audio codecs, but we'll focus on the codec by the name WMA since it was most heavily marketed and is the one most people are familiar with. First released in 1999, WMA was developed in response to MP3, which had exploded in popularity since 1993. It was also meant to compete with Real Audio, the audio codec of Real Player, which had been growing since 1995. Like WMA, WMV is a family of audio codecs, but for video rather than just audio. The codec with the name WMV was developed to be a competitor to Real Video, and was intended to capitalize on the growing market of internet video streaming. Interestingly enough, and probably as a scheme to spread its popularity, the WMV codec itself does not contain any DRM mechanisms, but WMV was frequently used in conjunction with Windows Media DRM, the overarching DRM service for Windows Media's platform. Think Media Center, Media Player, Movie Maker, etc. But let's roll back a little bit to Microsoft's utter defeat in the digital media space. Windows Media was meant to contend in the format war of its day. And for context, there have been plenty of format wars over the last 150 years. To name a few, AC beat DC, discs beat cylinders, cassettes beat 8 tracks, VHS beat Betamax, DVD beat Video CD, and Blu-ray beat HD DVD. But this time was different. Rather than competing over which format had the best physical properties, the race was on to establish dominance in the realm of video and audio codecs. When WMA and WMV were being developed, plenty of competing formats were all over the place, and Microsoft planned on introducing their own formats into the ongoing digital media war. At the time, formats like MP3, OGG, and Real Player's proprietary codecs competed in the PC space, and Microsoft wanted to leverage its control over Windows to reproduce what Apple had done with iTunes and its Fairplay DRM. Now, at the time, there were also open audio and video standards. They began growing in popularity throughout the late 90s and early 2000s. This was just around the time that the internet was threatening to surpass traditional physical media in widespread content distribution. MP3s exploded in use due to their prevalence in the early days of file sharing sites like Napster, Kazaa, LimeWire, and the others. And let's not forget there was the emerging MP3 player market as well. But the truth is, MP3s aren't that great of an audio format. I mean, it has its place, just like how JPEG is the go-to image format for the web, specifically because of its great space-saving features, and for the majority of users, Their quality is just indistinguishable from, say, a lossless format like WAV or FLAC. But it's not truly an open format. A number of organizations have claimed to own MP3 patents, but the ambiguity around its legal ownership and the fact that these patents have all lapsed by 2017 means that MP3 lives in this weird quasi-open state. Plus, its simplicity and age means that it lacks some really necessary features for the modern web. So what about alternative formats? Well, there's AAC, which is the successor to MP3, and in the free and open source camp, we have Opus, which replaced Vorbis, and it's used inside OGG files. In terms of video compression, AVC, or also known as H.264, is king codec. And it's also kind of an open format, though not really, because it's owned by a patent pool. Microsoft gets a cut of the royalty pie, so I'm betting that they're not too upset that WMV got beat out. But before I get too deep into that rabbit hole, there's a lot of interesting backstory behind the history of these formats and how FOSS projects like FFmpeg and VLC navigated this minefield. But that's a story for another video. If that's a video you'd like to see, let me know by hitting that like button and leaving a comment. If we can get to 5,000 likes on this video, we'll follow up with a new video about the history of H.264. But let's get back to the shenanigans Microsoft was hoping to pull with WMA and WMV. Now, they may have missed out on the initial rise of MP3 and H.264 MP4, but they were hoping and betting on Windows Media becoming the de facto standard for multimedia streaming. They pushed hard in their marketing efforts. They claimed that WMA was half the size of MP3s and that it gave near CD quality audio, and even fired shots at real audio for being an inferior quality. One factor that led to Microsoft's failure with Windows Media is its splintered efforts in content management. On one hand, Microsoft gave out Plays for Sure certifications to third parties, hoping to build a roster of OEMs that only supported WMA on their devices. But on the other hand, they then betrayed their Plays for Sure partners, and they tried Apple's approach by restricting their line of Zune devices to the Zune marketplace. Almost all of the third parties that they certified either shut down or switched to MP3 because working with Microsoft is an absolute nightmare. And Microsoft got blowback from its efforts with WMV too. They even broke compatibility between Windows Media Player versions 10 and 11, which would delete users' licenses and lock them out of content that they had already paid for. The truth is, though, Microsoft lost the format war even before they had a chance. Like how they failed with the Zune and with Windows Phone. These were poorly handled projects, and they lost their grasp on the underlying platform, and they seriously miscalculated how people would be consuming content in the future. Surely, Microsoft realizes that they're not going to be likable or profit from the public perception. Regular users are apathetic to Microsoft at best, and using their products are a means to an end. People don't want to buy into any sort of Microsoft-branded ecosystem, especially ones riddled with DRM and unnecessarily complicated restrictions. And media producers are repelled by Microsoft as well. Dealing with Microsoft's bullcrap isn't worth any of the technical reasons that Microsoft touted with WMA or WMV formats. And for professionals, sending over a WMV file has a sort of amateur smell to it. Like you had just whipped out Windows Movie Maker and exported an unregistered Hypercam video of you playing Halo. Unless you're watching this video on a Windows phone through Windows Media, it's pretty clear that Windows Media has failed. It still exists, but Microsoft has come to terms and surrendered to more dominant and successful formats like H.264 encoded MP4s. But honestly, they realize that if you can't beat them, then you join them. So for every commercial use of H.264, HEVC, and other formats, it ultimately benefits Microsoft since they're a patent holder. And isn't that just classic greedy Microsoft? Even when they fail, they still find a way to make money. But what do you think? Were you a fan of the Windows Media ecosystem back in the day? Leave me a comment and let me know. While you're here, don't forget to hit that like or dislike button. It lets us know if you're enjoying these videos. You can also smash that subscribe button to stay up to date with all the cool things we're doing here on the channel, and you can share this video with your friends too. I want to give a special shout out to my friends on Patreon and my YouTube members. If it weren't for you guys, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing here, so thank you. If you believe in the work that I'm doing and you want to help us grow, you can join the 100+ other Linux warriors using the links below and pledge your monthly support. And thanks for your consideration. But I think that's going to do it for now. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a blessed day, and I'll see you guys in the next one.